Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
This is the evening session with Adham on Cairo's #1.
Stop what you're doing and listen. Listen.
NileFM.
Maz, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right,
Adham, quick question for you. When you come to America, do you become Adham?
Yes, it's a weird combination of either Adam, Adham, or something like that. But we make it work. It's
Whatever gets you through immigration fastest.
Yes, absolutely. The beard obviously doesn't help, so I try to cut down on the beard before I go.
You're a good-looking man. You're a good-looking, bald, and beautiful.
So actually, you're married. How's that going? And you're married to an Indian lady as well, if I know correctly, right?
Yeah. Yes, I went, and there was a billion of them, so they're hard to avoid. And so it was either her or a Chinese woman. Those are my two options because there's a billion of them too.
Well, I mean, I actually have a question in regards to you being married to an Indian lady, because you're from Middle Eastern descent, and we have very, very strict matrimonial customs and habits, and with the mother-in-laws and the in-laws and everything. Are they the same with India, or did you have any trouble there, or did you get accustomed to it?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's funny. I'm sure a lot of the Egyptian guys and girls can associate with this. My mom, growing up, my mom was always saying, you have to marry Persian, you have to marry Persian. They understand our culture. We come from the same background, this and that. And I used to tell her, I said, because I grew up in America, and I said, look, I think the philosophy in our generations are a little different. And I told her, I said, look, I might go to the African jungles and meet some, Amazonian woman or something. Is Amazon in Africa? No, that's in South America. Anyway, wherever. I might go somewhere and get someone, totally away from our culture. And I remember she was worried and all this stuff. But as I got older, my mom respected, I basically stood up for who I was. And I think a lot of us, we get pushed by our parents into marrying someone specific, into doing, a certain line of work that we don't like. But I think that the more you show your parents that you know what you love, you know what you're passionate about, and you're mature, I think they start to respect you. I mean, it takes a while, but eventually that came about. So I honestly wasn't expecting to marry an Indian woman, but I met this Indian woman, and she's great. And then my mom ended up meeting her and loved her. And that was it. So my message to anyone listening is stick to your guns and show your passion, and your parents will come around.
Maz, I really need to ask you, when did you start doing comedy?
I started doing comedy about 14 years ago. I'd done plays and been on, done theater since I was 12 years old. I was a kid, loved being on stage, really wanted to do it as a career, but having Middle Eastern parents, they told me, no, you gotta be a lawyer or engineer or a doctor. So going into college, my parents convinced me that I was gonna be a lawyer, so I studied political science and kind of started going down that route. And then at some point in my college career, I took a year and I went abroad. I studied in Italy for a year, and I really fell in love with what this professor was doing. And I said, you know what, I don't want to be a lawyer, I want to be a professor. And even to that, my mom was freaking out. She was like, no, there's not good money for professors, you're gonna be broke. And I was like, how do you know about the job market for professors, Mom? Like, when did you become an expert on this?
It's one of those things that Middle Eastern moms tend to have. They know everything, like, medication, home remedies, everything.
Oh, yeah, of course, man. They got it all covered. So, anyway, I was just around. I finished college, started a PhD program to get my PhD in political science, and then I started doing plays again. I hadn't done plays in a while. I started doing them again, and I was like, man, this is what I love doing. So I told my mom, I said, look, I'm dropping out of the PhD program and going for that, and she was freaking out, and it was funny because then she and my grandmother, because we come from the revolution, like '79 revolution, where my family, they had their lives going, and then they had to pick up and move to America, and the whole world kind of turned upside down. So my mom was saying, at least learn something that people need, like at least become a mechanic. That way, I swear to God, man, she went from lawyer to mechanic. She's like, that way you can fix cars. You can fix cars anywhere in the world. She's like, nobody needs a comedian. And so that was the beginning. And then she's come around now. It's funny, like, she's one of my biggest fans now. Like, she'll like, come over and take t-shirts and DVDs to give to her friends, and she'll give me pointers about jokes, and it's pretty funny.
Did you notice any difference of how people perceive you as a comedian of Middle Eastern descent, pre and post 9/11?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's funny because I came to America when I was 6 years old, and this was late 1978. And so the Iranian Revolution was happening. And then a couple years later, the hostage situation happened with the Iranians. And right off the bat, I started feeling the difference and some of the racism towards Middle Easterners from then. And so I've always said, like, this image of Middle Easterners being terrorists and hostage takers and villains, it's been here my whole life. So even when I started doing stand-up, you know, officially went for it 14 years ago, so I guess it was 1998, 99. And you know, one of the first things I remember I took a stand-up comedy class, and the lady was saying, you know, write about stuff that you know, that's specific to you. So I was like, okay, well, I know the Iranian experience in America. And then they say, take some of your realities and then see if you can write a joke around it. So one of the earliest jokes I wrote, I remember I said, you know, growing up, it was hard to get parents to let their kids spend the night at our house, because they were afraid that we were going to kidnap, you know, hijack the kids, you know.
Wow.
And then I would do this act out where my mom would be calling the lady and be like, hi, you know, we'd like to keep Johnny for, you know, can we keep Johnny here? And like the other parents freaking out, what do you mean keep? You know, like nothing, you know, we just stay around, you know, just send some money if you need to, you know, like, or you take him to hospital. Like, the whole point being, it was an early joke, a stupid joke, but it played on that stereotype. So that stuff existed before 9/11, you know, it's been going. I think the biggest difference after 9/11 was that the amount of press we started getting from just that happening, because I think suddenly the press was interested, like, who are these Middle Easterners who are doing stand-up comedy, which is almost the, you know, total opposite of the terrorist attacks.
Yeah.
And so some of the press was really interested about, what are you talking about? Who are you? What's going on? And then obviously with the Bush administration, and when we did the Axis of Evil comedy tour, that was a great title, because it really took that label that was given to Middle Easterners and it tried to spin it on its head by putting the word comedy behind it. That was the big difference, was that it suddenly became this heated, interesting thing that people were really interested in.
How did that come to be, and did you know that it was going to be that epic of a success going into it?
Axis of Evil, the way it happened was, there's a lady named Mitzi Shore who owns the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. She's also the mother of Pauly Shore. Comedy Store is one of the biggest comedy clubs in America, and I guess in that sense the world. And like, you know, some of the biggest names like David Letterman, Jay Leno, Robin Williams, Richard Pryor, all these guys, Jim Carrey, they'd all gone through the Comedy Store. Legendary place. Mitzi Shore used to do these, when you're a regular at the Comedy Store, it means you perform there, you know, throughout the week with a bunch of different comedians. But then once in a while, Mitzi Shore would take like her black comedians and do a black comedy night, her ladies and do a ladies night, you know, the Latinos. So around the year 2000, when the latest Intifada had started, she's Jewish. She watched a lot of news. She's older now. She was older then as well. She used to watch a lot of news, and she saw the latest Intifada, and she said, you know, I feel like there's going to be a need for a positive voice of Middle Easterners in the world in the near future. This is before September 11th.
Yeah.
And so she said she wanted to put a Middle Eastern night together. So I was the only Middle Eastern comedian that was at the club. And then she saw Ahmed performing one night in another one of the rooms in the club, and she made him a regular. And then they asked me if I knew other Middle Easterners. They asked both of us, I think. And I started, you know, introducing different people. And the first time she put us together, you know, I'd seen Aaron Cater as well. He's Palestinian American. So the first time she put us together, she called it the Arabian Nights. And it was the show with anyone who was brown that wasn't Mexican or black was on our show. So we had Indians, we had Armenians, you name it, we had it. And we did the shows a few times, and you know, didn't think much of it. Then we continued to tour as the Arabian Nights, and eventually what happened was me, Ahmed, and Aaron kind of rose to the top of the group, because we were the only three that really came from a Middle Eastern background. And we started touring as the Arabian Nights for a bit, and then you know, Iranians aren't Arabs, so a lot of times Iranians would come to the shows and say, oh, good show, but we're not Arab. And I was like, I know, this is a title that was given to us. So we came up with a title, Axis of Evil. We changed the name to that. We started touring as that, and we did not know it was going to be as big as it got. I mean, really, what really helped launch us was our special that hit Comedy Central, really put us out in the public, and then we toured with it, and we came to the Middle East, and it was pretty amazing. And in the Middle East was amazing because when we first came out, there really wasn't really stand-up happening amongst Middle Easterners, and now there's been this whole boom. So it was really cool to be a part of all that.
I just wanted to ask you, one, do you have any future plans? And are you coming towards the Middle East anytime soon?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I want to say to my Egyptian friends, Ezeyek. And no, I was there. I was actually in Egypt this past May, and that was beautiful. It was great shows. You know, the energy and the crowds were just amazing. So I was in the region recently, and hopefully, you know, I try and come back every year to between a year and 2 years. That way you have some new material, and also I tour all over the world, so
that's always a plus.
Yeah, so no, I hope to be back, and I love coming back. And I love seeing all the new young comedians over there in Egypt. And you know, whenever I talk to them, a lot of times I tell them that, you know, there's guys like Mohammed Salam, and there's I know George Azmi. I don't think he's doing it anymore. He was great.
Yeah, unfortunately he quit. No one really knows why.
You know, the tough thing about stand-up is this: you need to have places where you can get up. Like the key to stand-up is to get on stage as much as you can and to write as much as you can. So really, you got to get on stage like 5 to 10 times a week, at least. And so, you know, somebody once asked Chris Rock, like, what's your advice for stand-ups? And he said, move to Los Angeles or New York, because those are two of the places where they have clubs everywhere. In New York, you can get on stage probably like 30 times a week, and some of the comics do. So really, that's the main thing. And I think in Egypt, it's a young culture, the stand-up culture, and I think it's about some of the young comics putting up, like, you know, open mic nights on a Monday or a Tuesday, you know, where they just get together in a coffee shop and they try out new material. That's what you got to do. You just got to get on stage over and over and over and over again. And I always tell somebody, if you see someone on stage who's really funny, your first question you should ask is, how long has that person been doing it? And you'll see the person who's been doing it the longest are the ones you'll see, like they're really good because they've really gotten comfortable. They've really worked it out. It's kind of like being a Jedi.
That's a very interesting analogy.
I'm telling you, man, comedy is like being a Jedi. You got to like be put in the time. I think I heard Chris Rock using that analogy, and I think he was saying like Bill Cosby's like Yoda. I mean, it's like this whole other level. A great movie everybody should rent. If they're into comedy, they should rent Comedian, which was the movie with Jerry Seinfeld making a comeback after the TV show Seinfeld, and he was going to do his new stand-up set, and it really shows how hard it is to put a set together, but it really shows that you really got to work hard. It's like going to the gym. You got to get in there every day.
Fair enough. But I guess that in this analogy, like, you know, is there a particular age, or like, do you hit a certain age and then you want to become a comic, and then you hear somebody say, no, you're too old to start training?
No, there never is. I mean, it's just, but I mean, obviously the younger the better. Like some of these guys, like Dave Chappelle was like 14 when he started. Eddie Murphy was like 15 or 16. I mean, some of these guys are really young when they start, but whatchamacallit, you know, I started when I was 26. That's old for starting in comedy. But I know that some parts of the world, like even like in the Middle East, some people, you know, they have a career going, they're engineers, they're whatever, and then they go, I want to try this. And so it's never too late.
Thank you for saying that, because I started when I was 26, so.
Yeah, it's never too late, man. Like, I mean, Bassem, what's Bassem's last name?
Bassem Youssef.
Yeah, Bassem Youssef, you know, he started this thing last year, and I know he's trying to do some stand-up, and you know, it's just about doing it over and over and over again and getting better. And he hosted the shows when we were out there. I thought he did a good job, and you know, he's like 60. I'm kidding. He's not that old. I love him. Bassem's great, man. He's a friend now, and I think more important thing is getting on stage as much as you can.
Well, there you have it. You heard it here from the Persian, known to many, but as well as all over the world, known as the great comedian Maz Jobrani. Maz, it's been wonderful having you on the show, and I look forward to having you on the show again. Of course, if you do come to Egypt, that would be really cool to have you in the show live and in the flesh as well. No worries, we won't kidnap you or anything.
Yeah, I'll kidnap you.
Potentially. Maz, it's been an epic pleasure having you on the show, man.
Thanks for having me, man. You're a pro. I enjoy being on your show.